don't have any comments. All sounds good.
I assume Jay's rate has to be the most pricey out of the three.
I can get the talk back to work, but we're all ready to record, so whenever
Okay.
you guys want to start.
Yeah, we're ready.
All right.
Cool.
I believe it does say it's recording. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. You watching the video, you might notice we're in a different location today. We're at the Space in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. It's an amazing building here. There's a venue here. There's obviously a podcast studio and a whole bunch of things here. So thanks to Mark and everybody at the Space for letting us be here today and film and record this thing. So I'm going to welcome in now a man you know from Jag Panzer, Nevermore, Megadeth, and he's currently in the legendary Swedish band In Flames. Chris Broderick, how are you, sir?
Thank you very much for having me. But don't forget Active Defiance as well.
Active Defiance,
right?
yes.
You know,
I always forget the Metal Blade part of it, right?
So yeah, very happy to be a part of your team. So yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. Overall, this is awesome. And,
Yeah, man. No worries. It's funny because I always like to ask the guests when they come on, like, you know, I have a list, obviously, of the 100 songs of Funny Metal, but I always like to ask the guests, like, who do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? And then he said King Diamond, and the song that I had, literally, it was in the next 5 or 6 podcasts I want to get to this song. So King Diamond, Welcome Home from the incredible album Them.
Yeah.
When did you first become aware of King Diamond?
Oh, that was probably Curse of the Pharaohs and Merciful Fate, and then through them had found King Diamond doing his own stuff from there. So I would have to assume that would have been around 82, 3?
Yeah, Merciful Fate was 82, 83, yeah.
Yeah, so
A minute ago.
yeah, I just thought it was so cool and dark sounding and had such a driving rhythm. And then when I got a hold of the album Them, it was just like game over, you know.
Yeah, he made a really incredible transition, which, you know, a lot of people don't really talk about as much, where you had Merciful Fate, this incredible band that's influenced so many bands, you know,
Right.
Metallica on down, Slayer, everybody. And yeah, they put out these 2 amazing records, and they were like ready to kind of almost, I mean, I don't want to say break big, but get, you know, pretty popular.
Yeah,
And then they leave, and he goes and does King Diamond solo, and it picks up right where he left off. Where all of a sudden, you know, Abigail, and then Fatal Portrait Abigail, and then Them was kind of like people go back and forth between Them and Abigail, which is their
Right.
favorite King Diamond
Absolutely.
record. I mean, I lean maybe a little towards Abigail, but I love both. And I haven't listened to Them for a while, so I listened to it and I go, I forgot how good this record is.
Oh my God, I could, if I put that album on, it's not coming off until it's done. Like, there's not just listening to 1 or 2 songs and then, oh, I got to go do something. It's like, well, I got to go do something, but I don't care, you know? So you're going to listen to the whole album because it just transitions from song to song to song, and such a cool story, I can't think of the right term, but, you know, in such a nice linear way. It's like,
King tells great stories.
yes, exactly. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, amazing song, amazing record. So Andy LaRocque is the key guitar player on there. What are your thoughts on Andy?
You know, I was actually fortunate enough to just meet him this last summer during the festival season over in Europe, and he is so humble and so nice. The same with King Diamond too. We got to meet him, and just so nice and so humble. And I was talking with LaRocque, and he has my absolute favorite vibrato on the planet.
Oh,
you
wow.
know? And his soloistic phrasing is so cool because it's such a cool mix of technique and then off the cuff sort of phrasing that makes it sound fresh and original without, you know, too fleshed out, too like, you know, okay, now I'm gonna ascend here and then I'm gonna descend to this thing, you know, too programmatic. You know, he's just got that off the cuff nature, and then his vibrato comes in and just really makes the notes sing. It's like he's definitely one of my favorite all-time guitarists.
I love that. He's an incredible guitar player and an amazing guy too. I mean, we've worked with him for so long. He's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
And you can listen to him on this podcast after you finish this episode. Go listen to him talk about July 7th of 1777
All right.
on our podcast, and he was amazing as he is all the time. Andy. Yeah. Another thing with King and moving from Merciful Fate to here, he had Hank Sherman was kind of the signature guitar player.
Right.
With Merciful Fate. Obviously, Michael Denner came over for the first few King Diamond records. but then he introduced Andy LaRocque to the world, and
Right.
what a like. He must like a lot of times singers and guitar players don't get along very well, but he certainly has the ear to get the right guy. And I mean, they're still together with both of those guys
Yeah,
all these years.
that's an incredible feat, irregardless of your qualifications as a musician. It's like, well, how well do you get along with the other people in your band? Because I think your listeners are probably all too aware that, like, keeping a band together for a long haul is extremely difficult.
Pretty much impossible.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
It's
So
like being married to 5 people or whatever,
yeah, yeah. So that kudos to them for doing that, and just creating what they create is just awesome.
Yeah, they're still doing it. I mean, still, like you said, you saw them this summer. They were doing all the festivals and everything. And
Yep.
I didn't get to go over to Europe this summer, but I've heard nothing but amazing things about the shows. So it's cool to do that. Yeah, it's Andy's such a good guy, and he's also, I find it interesting too when you have guitar players or really anybody in the band that also produces and engineers, and he does. He's multifaceted with that. Like he's an amazing
Right.
guitar player, but he's a really good engineer and producer, and engineered and produced a lot of the King Diamond stuff and a whole bunch of other stuff. His studio is called Sonic Train Studios. You can look it up, and there's pages of stuff that he's done. But that's not that easy to do to excel at all these different things.
Right, exactly. But I do think, I mean, I wouldn't think for somebody at his level that it would be necessary. But I think for most guitarists growing up these days, having some knowledge about a DAW and recording
Oh, yeah.
and the format and all of that is almost a necessity. So I think maybe he's just, really interested in that space and is following the trend.
Yeah, and he's been doing it for a long time. So he's like old. He's got a real studio with
Yeah,
like the boards and the whole thing. I mean, everybody can kind of create music at home now. And you're right. I think that's important for any musician today to be able to record at home properly.
Right.
Because you can record at home and have it not sound very good. So you have to
Right.
kind of learn to operate all the technology and machinery to make it sound good.
Yep.
How much do you delve into that part of it?
A lot, quite a bit actually. I go through phases where I spend a lot of time really trying to understand, how to accurately use a compressor, to all of the other functions of a DAW. But once I'm out of that phase, it's really just trying to get it to a point to where I can just plug in and go and get takes that I like, and then publish them quickly and easily. So yeah, it's usually when I go into the next phase of writing or creating that I start thinking about, like, well, what tools do I not know enough about that will really help elevate this particular,
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by that. And so when you record stuff at home, do you go through an amp or do you just plug directly into the thing?
No,
The board?
I definitely go DI, definitely, and I think that would be the case for almost any studio these days, because
Yeah.
it's so easy to send it back out and reamp it through a real amp. But it's a much more relaxed environment, I think, when you go DI in, and you can have so many options after the fact. You can try out different amps with the way that you play to take. You can try out VSTs. You can mess with effects in that context, and really dial it. Like, the one thing I really love is if you do send it back out to a real amp, and you're having your rhythm loop while you just go up to the amp and you're like dialing it in and seeing, just a little tiny, just a little bit more mid-range will make this pop. Spending that kind of time on your craft is a luxury that you didn't get before, when you had to pay and you get those, one take to get it right, or you're going to be paying another $500 for the studio the next day or whatever. So
Yeah, sometimes I like that because the only problem I have sometimes is when people have their own home studios, it's hard to finish something.
absolutely,
And
yeah, I
we've got that
understand
problem going on, including the artist we're talking about today. But that's a whole other story. Let's go back to when this record came out. And you were talking about technology and recording and stuff.
Yep.
Now we're talking about a record and a song that was recorded back in the days where you're in the studio
1988,
through
yeah.
real amps. I grew up in the '70s, so I love the production. It's all real. There's no fake stuff on there. It's all
There's
real
no
sounds.
quantizing,
Yeah,
no cut
so
and paste,
in a
yeah.
way, I kind of like that. There's so many great records back then, but those King Diamond solo records, though, for some reason had a different sound to them than what other people were doing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that, so we, not to go too far behind the covers here, but behind the scenes, but when we're doing this new King Diamond song, Spiral Lily that came out, we're looking to somebody to mix it, and we went with the guy who used to do, who still does Power Trip stuff.
Okay.
Who's amazing, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
But he did 2 mixes for us. One like the kind of modern style mix that King wanted to sound like, but then he did a mix he did an Abigail style mix,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, that's like, it's so different.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird today, but when you listen to the stuff back then, it sounds perfect, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, the sensibilities were different. I mean, think about all of the reverb on the drums back in the day that just wouldn't fly today. It would make it sound really odd. And
80s.
Yeah, yeah. And the sonic, like the frequency spectrum is much wider today. So you can really have representation of really low frequencies and then the highs as well. And so I think if you went to try and recreate what was done in the 80s, you'd have to literally narrow that frequency spectrum to get it to sound that way. And I think it just doesn't, that in itself is unnatural because we can get all those other frequencies today that we couldn't back then.
Yeah, it's always interesting, but I love the production of all that stuff back then.
Yeah.
Like I said, the King Diamond. When you listen to a lot of metal records that came out in the '80s, I mean, every band has their own sound and their own uniqueness, right?
Right.
But those records, for some reason, especially like the first 3,
Yeah, yeah.
were. It's hard to explain the. I mean, if you guys listen to it, you will kind of understand it, obviously. But it just had a different style and tone to it. Like when you put it on, and you always like. When you put on a Metallica record, okay, it's Metallica right away, or AC/DC, or whatever, or Black Sabbath, because there's that sound. And King Diamond had that sound for those first few records, and it was not just King and, Andy, but also, Mickey D, and the whole band had a certain sound, and the way they recorded it was really different, I think, because it was heavy, but it wasn't like bottom heavy, right?
Right. You know what? So coming into this podcast with you, I was like, oh, I gotta listen to them again and check it out. And
same here.
You know what the funny thing is? As soon as I started playing it, I'm like, wow. You know what adds to the aggressiveness? You can actually hear that bass and the bass distortion, and it's so locked in with LaRocque and just like, from the first Mickey D fill, like it's like you just knew it was going to be insanely good, and then the rest of the band comes in on that driving rhythm for "Welcome Home." Anyways, that's the song. I'm referencing.
That's the classic from this album for sure.
Yeah,
the whole record's great, but
right, exactly, and it's like you can hear the bass right in that driving rhythm with it, and it all just comes together, and it's magical.
So the one thing we always have to talk to, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is King Diamond and his vocals.
Yeah.
Because some people, most people love them and love him for that, but there's definitely a faction of people that don't. So what's your take on his vocal style?
My take is it works really well in the context that he's putting it out there, especially, for any thematic material, because for me, if I just listen to some of his, like the tonalities that he would sing in the really high falsetto stuff, it definitely would not work in the context of just a regular song where he was pulling that out for the whole song. But when he's using it for a character like Missy, for example, or something like that, or he's using it to create a melodic line that transitions into a new part. Like for me, I really thought it is the glue that bound the whole story together. So I loved it because it made all of those transitions and things like that so understandable to me. So I didn't, like I said, if you just looked at one way that he's singing, you might think, oh, that's kind of cheesy or whatever. But for me, it tells the whole story.
Yeah, that's a good point because he's talking about a bunch of different characters and all of these, especially all that. He still tells stories on every record,
right?
But he was especially telling stories back then. And you're right, he has different voicing for different characters, and I always liked his voice just because it's so unique. Like it's very. You can look at like Rob Halford, who's got a low and a high, and a lot. He's probably one of the better examples of that. They can do both really well.
Yep.
And King does the same thing, but his high screams are. That's why it's kind of a bit polarizing because it's so high and so different than any I mean, look, and they're all, my favorite vocalists, like, Jeff Tate and
Yep.
Rob Halford and, Bruce Dickinson. They all have that high falsetto, but they don't quite have it the way King has it.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I can tell you this, irregardless of, any particular thoughts behind his singing, it was just, it had overtaken me and my friends my senior year of school so much that when we would see each other in the hallways, we would just scream out grandma. Like it was funny for the whole year, It
That's
was,
awesome.
it was so pervasive in our everyday lives, so.
Yeah, that's the great thing about so much of this music is, when you grow up listening to it, it's like you said, it's the fabric of your life back then and
Yep.
all your buddies and stuff. That's so cool. When did you first see King Diamond live?
You know what? I didn't get to see him until after I'd moved to LA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't probably until 2006, somewhere around in there, I would
Oh, wow.
guess.
So a little coming in a little later.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So, but I was glad to have seen him, and I don't know why it never happened that I hadn't seen him. Maybe he saw Denver as a flyover city or something. I have no idea. I have no clue.
It's
But
weird. It's weird when you mention that because I talk to so many people about like Metallica or all the big bands, right? And I go, hey, like one of my really good friends was Ray from Fates Warning,
Yeah.
Ray Alder, and he had. I forget exactly when it was, but it wasn't that long ago, like maybe 10 years ago. He had never seen Metallica.
Right.
And like it's one of his favorite bands. I go, how could you never
Wow.
have seen Metallica? Like, it's not like you were living in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
because it just never happened. I hear that over and over again. Like, hey, how many times have you seen, Metallica's one or Slayer? And a lot of people are like, oh no, we only saw Slayer on the last run. And these are people who are, older and had opportunities to see them, but it
Right.
just kind of never happened. I was blown away by that because really, this is
Yeah.
the first time you're seeing them. That makes no sense, but I get it. Life and everything else comes in, and scheduling. I know how the scheduling thing goes. I always wish these bands would schedule their tours around my schedule.
Yeah, right.
Make it easier for me, but it's not how it
Give
works.
me a call up, let me know, oh, you're coming through this date? That doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
Why don't you
please.
guys come on tour over in this date, you know?
That would be the best thing for me. But I've actually spoke to agents about that, and they're like, yeah, we're not gonna. I know, I'm giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
But so yeah. So what were your impression because King's got a pretty big stage show, and
Yeah.
he always has, but he's really kind of right around when you started to come in seeing him live, he kind of elevated to like the next level.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that was the first time I had seen the sort of courtyard and fenced layout, and I thought it was great. Like it's everything that encompasses what King Diamond is, which is, a little bit more on the theatrical side, and it enables him to tell the stories more effectively. So I think it just brings people into where the whole artistry is coming from. So
Yeah, and I give him a huge amount of credit. So he, as everybody knows, or if you don't know, he had a major heart attack and was kind of out for about 7 or 8 years. He didn't
Right.
tour, didn't do anything, getting his health together. So the first show they played Sweden Rock. They got offered Sweden Rock, big festival in Sweden, and they were like, it was the first show back, so it was a big thing. And I think they weren't playing. I don't think they announced anything else. They played later, obviously, but they got paid a big amount of money, and King took every penny of what they got paid. None of the band guys got paid. Nobody got paid, and they put it into the stage production.
Oh,
and this
wow.
was when there was not. This is when bands just went on stage and played.
Yeah.
There's no, jeans, t-shirts, go on stage and play. Maybe there's a smoke or something, but there's
Right.
really not much production. And he went and put this huge production together, and like nobody even else on that bill had much production. Even like the headliner bands
Wow.
didn't. So he did that, and all of a sudden that was a game changer because he went from being. Before that he was good, but he, was playing, clubs and, all this sort of stuff. And as soon as he did that, it elevated him to completely to the next level live.
Right.
And then with the wonders of YouTube, everybody could see that. And it started to change. It started this big change within a lot of bands. We're like, oh, geez, we need to do production now.
Yeah.
Like, even if we never did. Like, another band that was affected by that a lot was Amon Amarth, one of our bands. And they didn't really do a lot of production before, but they saw the King stage setup and like, we need to start doing stuff. So now they've got this massive production. A lot of
Right.
bands, Ghost, I know Tobias from Ghost was a huge King Diamond fan and massively influenced in a lot of their stage production. All really kind of stemmed from King. Like, nobody was really doing much before that
Right.
around that time. So it was just a game changer. And it's just amazing how you look at what he's done and the band has done musically and this legendary music thing, but then also the live and the stage production thing too. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I think, to give Anders Frieden, of In Flames,
Yes.
some credit, he really thinks about that. Like, when we go out and we do tours in Europe, especially, he really spends the time thinking about how he wants the whole show to run and what kind of production we can carry and stuff. And that's stuff that for me, like, I'm like, I just want to play my guitar. So Anders, man, he picks up the ball on that, and he really puts a lot into it as well. And I think it's something that's necessary because it's the crowd loves it, and it keeps them coming back, and it gives everybody something that they can see and vibe with.
100%. And I mean, so many bands do that, and Flames always has great production too. I give you guys credit for that. But yeah, you have to do that. And what I've also noticed too, again, because of YouTube and social media, like if you're doing production things that are extraordinary, it's a whole next level game changer. For example, there's this band called Parkway Drive from Australia. I know them. I've seen them before. They're nice guys.
Right.
But they started this. So they're pretty big in Australia. From Australia, so
yeah.
they played like the Sydney Opera House, and it became like a viral thing where they had this part of the show where the singer's standing on stage, and the stage like goes up like 30, 40 feet in the air, which isn't an unusual thing. We've seen that with Kiss and other things, but just him up there. Excuse me. And then they hit this breakdown, and there's just fire everywhere, like fire's coming out of the stage. It's like insane. I'm like, oh my god. I've seen Slayer and Rammstein, all these crazy fire things. This was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
They outfired Rammstein?
Yeah, and then it goes from there. So then they just did a tour here in the States. And if you guys want to go look it up on YouTube, the song is called Crushed. It's by this band, Parkway Drive. And go watch it. Watch the Sydney Opera House one, and then anything from any of the Summer of Loud tour. So that same song, the last song in the set.
Yeah.
Same, these crazy productions, there's fire everywhere, and this big breakdown towards the end, and there's massive fire everywhere. The drums go on fire. Well, actually, the drums start spinning. Like kind of like almost like Tommy Lee used to start spinning around, and then it goes on fire, and he's like doing whole 360s while the whole drum set's on fire, the whole stage is on fire. It's over the top. So.
And just so your listeners know, one of the most expensive things you can consider in production live is having fire.
It's fire, yeah, exactly. And you've got all the regulations with fire marshals, what you can and can't do, and it's expensive. But those guys, I was talking to them afterwards. I just tell them, like, I've seen, like, I don't know, 6,000 shows, and I've never seen anything quite like that. They're like, really? So it's pretty over the top. But a lot of bands do that now too. But it all started, at least in the second wave, kind of with King Diamond. So yeah, you're in Flames now. I love those guys. Big hockey fans.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I actually ran into them. It's a bizarre story. Show you a small world. I was in Philadelphia, going to a Philadelphia Flyers game with my buddy Sean Rourke, who works for the NHL. Okay. And so we're sitting there watching the game, and we're kind of in the corner a little bit, so he's sitting next to me. I can't really see the row. Right. He goes, excuse me. He goes, hey, there's a band sitting next to us. So there is. So I peeked over. I go, oh yeah. I go, they look really familiar. So I couldn't really quite figure out what it was. Mm-hmm. So he told me one of the guys had the pass on. It was Opeth.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So I go over to the Opeth guys, go, hey, it's Brian, hey. We're talking. I go, yeah, the In Flames guys are here. They're like on the other side. I'm like, really? So I went over, said hi to all those guys in between periods, and
that's cool.
Just like random Philadelphia Flyers game. I guess I had a day off from the tour they were doing together. And yeah, those In Flames guys are so good. And, I mean, what's it? So to talk about them for a little bit, because again, massively legendary band, and one of these, the next level of bands, like metal bands, almost every single one of them cite In Flames as like a massive influence.
Right.
What's it like being in that band now?
Quite honestly, it's like what you. I've said this sometimes, but it's very, very true. It's like being in that first band that you join in high school, where you're like, we're gonna make it all the way, and you have that dream going, and then of course things happen, life happens, and you end up playing with a million different people over the course of your career. But it's really like getting on stage with your best buddies from high school. Like, I really love playing with Björn, super mellow dude. We play well together. He loves the guitar. I love the guitar. Anders is so cool and mellow, and like, they let me have my space. They let me be me. There's no animosity in any way or anything like that. And they they do their craft well. So
Yeah, they're like I said, they're super great guys, and every time I've seen them, it's always been good. And like I mentioned, they've always got good production, and of course, I like them even more because they're big hockey fans. But that's a whole nother story.
right.
But yeah, so just talking about like the '80s and like the music you were into in the '80s. So aside from obviously King and Merciful Fate, we were talking about, what other stuff were you listening to?
At that time, in 1988, when Them was out, and I was really into that, I was also listening to all the Shredders at that time. So it was Yngwie, it was Jason Becker, Marty Friedman, Paul Gilbert, Racer X, I thought Racer X was a little bit more glam than I was at that time. But the guitar playing was so undeniable. It really didn't matter. I don't care. They could wear tights on their head if they wanted to, and I would have been listening. So, Metallica at that time, I was definitely huge. Like Master of Puppets was always my favorite CD. So, that, and then of course the Black Album when that came out. I was actually a real fan of that. I think being from Colorado, you're a little bit more into the mainstream radio play sometimes because that's more of what you get in Middle America. You don't have like KNAC or anything like that that's feeding you the deep cuts that I would have got if I were here or in California.
Sure. Were you still in Denver when you were in Denver when the Black Album came out, right?
Yes.
Did you go? So they played, I think it was 3 nights at McNichols Arena in Denver on the Black Album tour. Were you at any of those shows?
No.
Oh, really?
No. Yeah.
Oh man, those were great. Like every once in a while they'll invite me, like, hey, we're in Denver for 5 or 6 days. Why don't you come out and hang? I'm, all right. So I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went out there, and I've seen them a bunch of times, and they were playing three nights there. And by the third night, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to the third night. It's like I'll see them twice, but they're so good.
Yeah.
I went to the third show, and it's great. It was a super fun week. A lot of crazy stories, but I mean nothing too crazy. But I do remember one of my favorite stories about people ask, because everybody's always asked about like James Hetfield and what's he like and all this stuff. Well, I'll tell you, at least this is in 1992 or 3 or whenever it was. Yeah. So we were all in Denver. We were there for a week, and in downtown Denver, if you guys don't know, downtown Denver is like got a whole long street of shops and shopping areas. It's just pretty cool. So it was like James and his assistant and his best friend who was also out for that week, and we just went kind of shopping. So he goes into a cowboy boot place. Right. Because he's a big cowboy boot fan, because he's a hunter and all that stuff. So we go in, and word kind of trickled out that James Hetfield was around there. So all of a sudden, these kids come in, and there's like, I don't know, 20, 25 of them or something. So we kind of stopped what we're doing, and, he signed autographs and talked to everybody, and it was all good. And then it kind of died down, and they all left, and they returned to shopping for boots. I was not buying a cowboy boot that day, or a cowboy hat. But the person who was helping us went up to James and said, "Wow, it doesn't get annoying? Isn't that a pain?" He goes, "Like, look, that's part of the gig. Like, we're fans just like they were."
Yep.
And same story. That same time we were there, and it was not winter yet, but it wasn't super warm. And I think one night it was pretty cold out.
Right.
And so, we were, show and hang out afterwards at like 3 a.m. We're all in the van going back to the hotel. And it's like I said, it's cold. It's, I don't know, it's in the 30s probably. Denver's crazy for weather.
Yeah.
It can be 80
extremes.
degrees. It can be 80 degrees during the day and then 20 below at night practically. It's crazy. But it got really cold. Again, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So we're all in this van leaving, and there's probably 30 kids out there that waited all that time just to get some autographs. So of course, they stopped the van, got out, signed everybody's stuff, and did whatever. But that's kind of the band that because they're like, we were kids. We were those same kids.
Yep.
Lars was that kid when he was that age. So always massive respect for those guys for sure. Who were your guitar gods growing up? Who did you worship as guitar players?
Yeah, so it was definitely some of those I mentioned: Paul Gilbert and Jason Becker, Marty Friedman. Yngwie, of course. And then I had my classical influences like John Williams and Scott Tennant and Paco de Lucia, for flamenco, and just insane. I mean, I could go on forever, but those would be the ones. Vinnie Moore, I would add him. Like, he was phenomenal. Tony McAlpine, like, I loved Maximum Security. And so many others. I could just keep going on and on. But for me, it was really like about showcasing talent. I really loved that. So
Yeah, I love talking to people about the evolution of heavy metal, like where it came from. Obviously, it came from the blues. The blues is the biggest denominator. Really, that's where all rock and roll really
did
came
it,
from, were the blues.
obviously I'm not sure here, but even in the European metal scene, it came from the blues as well.
Pretty much, I mean, that's where that's where it originated from. Because we all have to you trade the lineage back to Black Sabbath and Blue Cheer and all those bands. It all came from the blues, and really all rock
Interesting.
did. But what I love about metal, that's the base core of it, right? The
Yeah.
classical music has so much of a massive influence on metal. Like there's so many,
Right.
I mean, Richie Blackmore, I think, is one that really played a lot of classical stuff in his music when
Yeah.
he was Rainbow and Deep Purple. And the other thing that I never really thought about until I started doing this podcast,
Right.
and another huge influence, more on drummers than other parts, jazz.
Yeah.
Like jazz was a big thing because I was talking to Dave Lombardo, who's my favorite metal drummer,
Right.
and just talking about his style of play because he plays a little bit differently than anybody else did.
Yeah.
And he grew up, Cuban household, and he so he was around a lot of jazz, and he kind of incorporated a lot of those jazz players in his
That's
drumming.
cool.
But I never really thought about jazz being into metal, but those
Yeah.
those three factors. I mean, there's clearly a bunch of other influences, but
Yeah.
I think those three elements seep through the most.
I
for
just
me.
like it. To me, it's as a genre, it seems the most. It's like the most democratic. It invites every other genre to come play with it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so you got bands like Candaria that are really mixing it up with jazz. You know, and then you run all the way into fusion players that kind of go back and forth between metal. I'm not sure if you know about this guitarist Andy Wood, but he's
Heard the oh yeah, I know who he is.
super great player, really good. But he runs everywhere in between country and
Yeah.
metal,
And he produces too, right?
yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I don't know that much about that side of what he does, but
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, there's so many great guitar players out there.
yeah.
Well-
So it's cool that metal is so inviting. You know, it's like
Yeah, we get pegged with it all the time. It's it's not that inviting, but it really kind of is. I mean, obviously, just punk rock is a huge influence on metal. I mean, we can go on for hours on end, but we don't have that much time. But anyway, I wanted to thank you so much for doing this. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming
too.
in and doing it in person, even better. We don't get to
absolutely.
do that enough. It's a lot of fun. So really appreciate doing this, and thanks
I had
again,
a
man.
great time doing it. So
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Ta-da.